This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this question comes from Brian On. And Brian asks about the views of Vilfredo Pareto, a leading critic of Karl Marx toward the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th centuries. Pareto is an important character in the development of modern mainstream economics as well, but Brian's question focuses on his critique of Marx, and it's a critique that others have also made, so I think it's appropriate for me to respond. The critique is basically this, that Marx oversimplifies history by seeing the struggle of classes, proletariat versus capitalists, as somehow more important, dominant, key, central, essential, whatever word you want, and in the process misses, downplays, undervalues all of the other kinds of struggles between men and women, between races, religions, ethnicities, and so on, elites struggling for power, and on and on and on. Life is more complicated, Pareto wanted to argue. Marx had simply seen a tiny fraction of what was going on and then had overstressed it to the detriment of all the other kinds of struggles in which human beings are engaged. I do reject this criticism. I don't think it's reasonable. I don't think it's fair. If I were in a harsher mood, I would say that Mr. Pareto had not read the Marx that he is criticizing. And let me explain why. There are basically two fundamental reasons I would reject this criticism. First, it is simply not the case that Marx thought that the class struggle could be summarized or was only about workers versus capitalist employers. Volume 1 of Capital, his major work, which had 3 volumes, is about that relationship between capitalists and the workers who produce surplus value for them. But volumes 2 and 3, and particularly volumes 3, are about other classes. Basically, Marx's argument is that the workers produce a surplus for the capitalists who employ them. And these are the workers who actually make goods and services. But the capitalist, in order to make this system work, needs a whole lot of other people who don't, in fact, produce goods and services. I'm going to give you a few examples. He needs, for example, in a regular business, a purchasing officer, a purchasing employee. All that person does is buy the inputs needed for production. That person doesn't produce anything himself or herself. Likewise, there are sales personnel, people whose job it is to take the finished product and convert it into money, sell it, but that doesn't produce anything. Likewise, he needs a secretary to keep records. That's very interesting, very important in a firm, just as purchasing and sales are, but it's not production. All of these other groups whose work is necessary, and you can think of them as creating the conditions which allow the capitalists to get surplus, to get profits out of those workers who do produce whatever the capitalist sells. But Marx goes to elaborate lengths to talk about all of those others as classes. Moneylenders, bankers, landlords, sales personnel, purchasing personnel, clerks, guards, all kinds of people who are not capitalists. They don't hire anybody. And they're not workers who produce goods and services. It's not what they're there for. They're there to create the conditions. That is all worked out in great detail in Volume 3. Marx is clearly working, as you can see when you read it, with a theory that divides people not into two classes, capitalist and worker, but into many classes that are related to capitalists and workers, but are different from them. In short, it's a complex, rich, class analysis. It doesn't conform to the caricature that Pareto offered. Number two, Marx never said, never argued, nowhere, that the only struggle that goes on in the world, or the most important struggle, is the struggle between capitalists and workers. He focused on it, absolutely. He concentrated his attention on it, certainly. But that's not because it was more important than the others, but it was because it had not been understood. It had not been appreciated. Struggles over power, struggles over gender, struggles over race, struggles over wealth are different from the struggle between the producer of a surplus and the appropriator of a surplus. Marx's work was to teach us, to persuade us, that what had been neglected, overlooked, inadequately or insufficiently appreciated, the capital-labor struggle, was brought into the conversation, into our efforts to understand society, because it would be crucial to change the way we organize the production and distribution of surplus if we were ever going to get the liberty, the equality, the democracy that Marx and so many of his critics wanted. And he thought he was contributing a new additional insight, not some claim that what he was focusing on was any more important than what others had already figured out. This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, thanking our Patreon community.